Grace be unto you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ.
Amen.
Maybe. A word to you. I often say, and with a deep sense of detached sincerity, that I never, when I meet a new group of people, can honestly say that I'm glad to be there. I am just too insecure an individual. And I say that a part of that insecurity is neurotic. I don't know what happened to me and don't care much in my early conditioning that made me the kind of a being that in the midst of a crowd I feel like I'm walled off in the corner. I say I don't give much of a damn about that. The luxury of worrying about your psychological state was for yesterday, not today. And then a part of it is I look upon as downright creative insecurity that's given with my creatureliness. Nobody makes a decision except in the midst of ambivalence and ambiguity, and therefore in the midst of just overwhelming, white hot insecurity. Not only because you negate when you affirm, but because you haven't, in the broad sense, that is the man of faith who always sees in the comprehensive sense. You haven't the foggiest idea of what your decision is going to do to history, while at the same time you have to make the decision, know exactly what that decision is going to do to history. So this kind of insecurity is given with selfhood itself. But very frequently when I come to the end of a time with a new group of people, there's some kind of a sense of at-homeness, and sometimes I'm very, very suspicious of it because a part of that is downright neurotic, you know, and then a part of it may very, very well be the creative edge of what it means to be a human being. So I can say that I'm glad to be here with intentionality, but that means I have to put content upon that, if not to you, to myself. What do I mean? And if I said to myself just at this moment what I meant, I would remind myself that I have a little tabulating machine in my mind that has to do with college campuses, and part of the categorical disposition of that machine divides this nation up into 4 or 5 great areas, and I have my impressions of each one of these, and I'll not compare you with what I think the student bodies of the universities and colleges are like in the Northwest or in the Southeast or the Northeast, but would say to you that I have been a little bit surprised on a very positive side, and that has to do with the amount of what I say to myself is unanticipated courage that I sense within you. Nobody can ever plead in this moment to me lack of lucidity. Our problem is courage, and I sense within you less fear, less tendency to rush way back into your mole holes than I expected. So this leaves me with a kind of strange and weirdly strange hope about the church as it's in the hands of those of you who are in the college campuses in the western part of United States. And I repeat to you again that my passion, and I mean passion, is with the Church of Jesus Christ. A word about myself a little further. You probably have noticed that the way I come at life is always to begin with the is and not with the ought. Each man and each authentic community forges their oughts out of the concrete ises. And in terms of theology, therefore, my mind always goes this way. You and I do not present Christ to the world. Christ is already Lord of this world. Our job is to pull off the mask. At the very depths of personal and social going-onness is the Christ happening. That's the way it was in the beginning, it is now, and it shall be there at the end. There's nothing religious about it. There's nothing Christian about it. There's nothing pious about it. The self-understanding that I point to with the Christ happening is what it means to be a human being, period. And the problem is, most of us have blinders on our eyes to what it means to be a human being, and therefore we do not see what it means to be a human being, or that we do not see that Christ, what we point to with that symbol, is the Lord of this world, period. And I see my task in life, whether I do it with skill or with a dull butcher knife, is to simply pull the mask off of our eyes, that we may see in the very depths of the great human adventure that there's one, only one, eternal, unchanging, never passing truth happening, and that's the Christ happening. Now, one word about the week. The subject was the biblical faith and the ethical revolution. And I don't know how you have to come at that, but I have to come at it in this fashion. That you and I are living in a radically new world. And if the Christ happening is at the happening of the civilizing process, then it's to be found right in the midst of this new world, which is our world. And that if we're looking any place else other than into the midst of the scientific revolution, the urban revolution, the secular revolution, we haven't the slightest chance of seeing the Lordship of Jesus Christ. And therefore, though I'm not happy with what I've done here, I feel we have to begin just by looking hard-headedly at the actual world. For Christ never ruled over any of our dream worlds. He only rules over the actual world that we're in. We begin there, and then we try to say to ourselves, only this one thing: what does it mean for us to be related to this depth over againstness in the civilizing process? So the last three times I have attempted to deal with that issue. I think on Wednesday if I'd like to do that over again. I think I sort of lost my nerve, that I probably should have come head on at the secular revolution. And I tried to come at it in a tangential way and never got really to it. But be that as it may, God receives that blunder just as much as if it had been an overwhelming success in terms of what I intended to do. And yesterday, trying to sweep up the manure that I dropped, I tried to come at a rather comprehensive way at the whole problem of the Christ happening. And now today I want to deal with the style of life that issues from that happening, and to place it in the context of the new image of the church in the 20th century. And I have two bits of poetry. One from my friend Lawrence. Those that go searching for love only make manifest their own lovelessness. You little old sentimentalist, you. Old Lawrence was on you long before I was. Don't you really find the most damn sickening people that you bump up against is folks who's always worrying about whether or not they're loved? I had several colleagues here. They were colleagues in the past in a more intimate fashion. I came out here and found out that they had been in group therapy classes for a year. Those that go searching for love only make manifest their own lovelessness. And the loveless never find love. That word was never. And the loveless, those that always are worrying about love going on, they are loveless and they never find love. Never. Never. Only the loving find love. And they never have to seek for it. Now, don't you wish I'd have read that without those editorial comments? So you could have just listened to what Lawrence stuck into history? Those that go searching for love only make manifest their own lovelessness, and the loveless never find love. Only the loving find love, and they never have to seek for it. And now from my friend Paul. Oh, you dear idiots of Galatia, who saw Jesus Christ the crucified so plainly, who has been casting a spell over you? I will ask you one simple question. Did you receive the Spirit by trying to keep some law or by believing the good news? Ask yourselves that. Surely you cannot be so idiotic as to think that a man begins his spirit journey in the Spirit and then completes it by reverting to some kind of external observances. Has all your painful experience brought you nowhere? I simply cannot believe it of you. Does God, who gives you His Spirit and works wonders in your midst, do these things because you've believed some concept or because you have believed the good news? Ask yourselves that. At one time, when you had no knowledge of God, you were under the authority of the gods which have no real existence. But now that you have come to know God, or rather are known by Him, how can you revert to dead and sterile principles and consent to be under their power all over again? Why, your religion is beginning to be a matter of observing certain days or believing certain ideas. Frankly, you stagger me. You make me wonder if all of my efforts over you have been literally wasted. It is to freedom that you are called, my brethren. Plant your feet firmly, therefore, within that freedom that Christ Jesus has wrought for us, and do not ever again allow yourselves to be caught in the shackles of slavery. What a poet. What a poet. What a poet. If your theological orientation is like unto mine, in which you begin with the fact there's one God, not two, one God, not two, in any way, shape, or form. That is to say, if you, along with Augustine and myself, can say, by holding your bowels, that all that is good, which is to say, there is one God and not two, then you'll understand how I am convincedly persuaded that if this one is rotting mighty rots in the midst of the historical going-onness of our time, that he is at the same time upheavaling his people. And my thesis, you remember, has been that there has been no such radicalness in the upheavals of the civilizing process hitherto, I say, like unto those that we are experiencing today, which would mean that at this moment in history, God is working revolutions within the body of His people, such as we never even dreamed of in times past. The day after tomorrow, we're going to understand, for instance, that the Protestant Reformation was but a mosquito blot on the window pane compared to what is happening within the church in our moment. And the wonderful and the frightening thing about it, you and I are it. You and I are it. It seems to me, when you look back through the history of the church, that we have come almost but one round. If if this is 500 and this is 1,000 and this is 15 and this is 20, where we are, in the first 5 centuries our fathers were busy attempting to articulate unto their time the Word, the meaning of the happening, at the center of which was one Joshua. And then in the next 1,000 years, that Word was taken and injected into every aspect of the civilizing process. We call this, in our smugness, the Dark Ages. The Dark Ages, hell. This Word was pushed into philosophy, pushed into politics, pushed into the family image, pushed into art. It impregnated society and got lost in the midst of it. And then God, and mark you, He's always riding on that throne somewhere in the shadows. He raises up His people that reach down and yank that Word out and re-articulate it in terms of what He had ahead. This is why men like Tillich and Woltmann and Niebuhr and Bonhoeffer are antiquated, in the sense that they simply completed a 500-year job that the Lord laid out for Himself, which was begun by the Reformers. You understand that? At this moment in history, we in the Church of Jesus Christ are clearer about what the happening of Jesus Christ is than at any time in the Church hitherto. It's like unto the second coming. It's like unto the new incarnation. We have clarity that would have made my very intimate friend Luther shudder before the light of it. And that is the end of the modern period of the Church. And now, here am I. And here is you. And you can see what the Lord has in mind for us. We must take the clarity of that Word and shove it down into every aspect of the civilizing process, minus nothing. In the next 1,000, 20,000, the Lord never discloses His chronological time schedule to His prophets, and it may be that in 100 years that this is the task. But when you see this is the time when you decide whether or not you're going to turn in the badge. And by that I mean it's at this kind of a point you decide whether or not you're going to be a man of faith. At this point, you decide whether you're going to be the church. I get so damn sick of little diaper-clad characters who are around bitching at the church in terms of not waking to liturgy and not being able to say the creed and about Mrs. Big Bottom, when the issues are here. Here's where you decide whether or not you're going to be the church, as to whether the next 1,000 years you're going to build. And the job is clear. You don't even have to bring up any little theological problem as to who means by Christ. That's been settled for our time. And if you've been too stinking lazy, or your leaders called clerics have been too stinking lazy to get on top of it and help you get on top of it, that's too bad. God's moving on. And the key, it seems to me, that draws this period together is the new operational, functional image that the church is forging of herself. And the key to that image is in the word mission. In this age, the church had an operational image of itself, and it went. She had another one in this time, and it went. It had another one in this time, the perversion of which you and I are the living, walking representatives of. That's what you mean by the sickness of the church. We are hanging on to an image of the church that no longer has any relevance. That's the key. But in the midst of that, God is bringing to be a new operating image of the people of God, and the key to that image is mission. But this does not mean, this is a hard thing to talk about for me, this does not mean that the church has a mission. That's a part of the old image of the modern church. It means that the church is mission. That is to say, I don't have a mission in history. Hell, I am the mission to history. Do you not understand that? All that I am, that part you like about me and that part you can't stand about me, that's the mission in history that Joseph Wesley Matthews is. You remember that book, Mission to Moscow? Or if all of us today suddenly went to Mars from Earth, we wouldn't have a mission. Hell, we would be the mission of Earth to Mars. Do you understand that distinction? The church is not some entity out here that has a mission. The church itself is a mission. The church is an invasion into the civilizing process, which invasion is itself a mission. Now, I would like to talk at length on this, but I won't. But I've got to get some kind of content in it. And I come at it somewhat after this fashion. God has never been without a people. A few years ago, when we who were theologians were grappling with the articulation of the Christian faith, we made use primarily of the categories of psychology and art in order to articulate what it meant to be a man who was received in this world. And during that time, we made the wonderful discovery that the category of history and the category of selfhood were inseparable. To speak mythologically, they were created at once. That is to say, on the other side of the coin of history was the category of the self. That is to say, that history is a going-onness precisely at the point in which a human decision is being made. Now, in our moment, when the theologian who knows what he is doing is not using those categories, but the categories of sociology and of the discipline of history to articulate the meaning of faith, a brand new discovery has come into being, and that is that the category of history and the category of the revolutionary cadre are but two sides of the one coin. That is to say, to speak mythologically, that the elite that moves toward the future and the category of history were created at the same time. Now, I say God has never been without a people, and that's what I mean by that statement. Let this a little bit two-phallic symbol represent the onward flow of the future out of the no longer into the not yet, out of the known into the utterly unknown. And you can see that behind this figure is what I deem to be the new universal image of mankind, and that is the evolutionary process in terms of the 20th century conception of evolution. Now, right at this point, the point between the no longer and the not yet, right at this point, you find, and only at this point, you find the people of God. The people of God. Now, when I say that God has never been without a people, what I mean is that history has never been without that point, without that body of individuals who were carving the way into the not yet, away from the no longer. And that you cannot even conceive of the historical flow in any other way than those prophetic figures, that prophetic minority, that sentinel community that dared to move out before the mass, and where in the hell do they get the courage? And to chop away into the unknown, exposing themselves out over the nothingness of utter uncertainty, utter ambiguity, and utter anxiety. Those are the people of God. They are the history makers. They are the ones that blaze the road through the wilderness, that the well-being of the kind may be generally ministered unto. God has never been without a people, because history and the revolutionary cadre are inseparable categories. Now, there came that time in history in which this revolutionary cadre became unlimitedly self-conscious. That was in and about a strange figure called Jesus of Nazareth, or Joshua of Galilee. Then there belched into being the revolutionary people with lucid self-consciousness. Now, don't you allow what you see and what you call the church today to blind you for a moment. It was at that moment in history that there came to utter self-consciousness that there had to be a revolutionary people that lived in terms of the eschatological dimension of life with a great big period after that. Now, of course, the moment that anything is born into self-consciousness like that, you can see in terms of this analysis that there needs to be a revolutionary cadre within the revolutionary cadre. Do you understand that? This is why our fathers have always grappled with the double pole of the church. And you little old characters who are afraid of those little old women of both sexes don't even know what your fathers grappled with. They knew damn well there was always the little church within the great church. They always knew that there was the church within the church. And they, I think, at times came to see that it was this group that constantly had to be the gadfly to this group, that this group might be the gadfly to this group. And by this group, I mean the latent church, this the self-conscious church, and this the revolutionary church within the church, which is the revolutionary body that keeps the latent church, the revolutionary core, or the people of God. And when you and I get to heaven, to speak symbolically for a moment, we're going to discover what Jesus meant when He suggested there'd be people there you never dreamed would be there. Besides being surprised about yourself, I said, they shall come from the east and the west, etc. This is the new image of the church in our day that has become clear. The church as mission to civilization is the revolutionary edge of the civilizing process. And I like to put the content this way. The revolutionary people. And first of all, you don't look for Boy Scout badges and then follow them. No. You look immediately out here to the civilizing edge. And whoever is standing out there, they are the church. You understand that? Whoever is out there, they are. If you want to know what the signs of faith are today, they are sociological signs. That is, you may never have slept with a fellow. You may never have taken a drink of hard liquor. You may never even have masturbated. That's got nothing to do with the sanctified state in the new image of the church. Right here is the one criteria where that individual is standing at the revolutionary edge, dying on behalf of mankind. There and there alone is the people of God. Whether they be white, blue, green, red, whatsoever, that's beside the point. When you work in the 20th century, you're not dealing with the definitions of terms such as church. You're dealing with verifiable not-meanesses that are just over against you in the civilizing process. That is to say, when you use the word C-H-U-R-C-H, that is a sign that is pointing to something that's there. And what it is pointing to are those individuals, those groups of individuals who are dying on behalf of breaking loose new possibilities in the tomorrow. You got that picture? And if you aren't out there, you may fool those little old ladies sitting in the church, but you damn well are never going to deceive me. You are not the church. The church are the people of God. And the people of God are those who lay down their lives so that other people don't have to. And when you come at that point, I have three little criteria. Wherever I find a person who is breaking open the more comprehensive picture, there's the revolutionary. If you're the daughter in the home and you've lived in a little tight little image of our family, and you move in and slit that womb and get the family projected out beyond it, there is the revolution. And so with the nation. Those of you who are going to vote for Goldwater, or those of you who are going to vote for Johnson, and at this moment, it doesn't make any difference to me whatsoever. But as a man of faith, you use this criteria. Which one of these parties at this moment in history is breaking open the broader, comprehensive sense of humanness in civilization? That's your criteria. Who in the world at this point, I'm going to swear, gives one good goddamn about Lyndon Johnson or Mr. Goldwater when you cast your vote? You are casting in terms of an understanding that has to do with the way history is going to go tomorrow. And the second criteria that I have to grasp a hold of what it means to stand there is the movement from the past into the future, the movement from the unknown, from the known into the unknown. That one who is attempting to hang on back here, he is never the people of God. The people of God are the ones that are thrusting forward. Now, just so you don't get this mixed up with a kind of sickness that I call the sickness of the liberal, let me go to Camus for a moment. He calls the man I'm talking about the rebel. And he sees that the rebel never finally identifies himself with any party, yet in any given situation, he identifies himself with a party to the hilt. Now, you got that picture, do you not? He's the one who never sells his soul to any party. And always within civilization, there's the conservative and there's the liberal element. And you cannot have society without this. This is needed greatly. When this man sells his soul here, he becomes not a conservative, a reactionary. And when this man sells his soul over here, he doesn't become a liberal, he becomes a radical for the sake of being a radical. And both of these are equally men of unfaith. This is to say, you do not begin with some kind of a party, nor do you begin with the guy who is a conservator, as one who is trying to turn the clock back to the past. You do not begin with that. This could be either one. The only problem is when somebody has lost their soul, in which it becomes clear that someone is trying to hang on to the given rather than forging new structures in the future. And the third criteria that I have is hard for me to put it. I'd like a new word. It's something like aphoristic. And by that I mean that person who has dared to look any situation dared to look into the heart of any situation and affirm it. This is to say, as I like to put it, the one who dares to look in the eyes of another and see that mystery that's just, it's just, my wife likes to put it, and she's a better theologian, that just the stark, naked facticity of the shown-upness of a not me. Do you understand that? This is something like the noumenal experience. This is seeing the unmanipulable, the uncontrollable that is there in any other person that you see. This is the one who, as one of my female colleagues in our order keeps saying, is delivered from seeing spooks everywhere he turns, because they've learned with Faustus to hold up the cross and see that spooks all flee, that all turns into good when one dares to stand in the eschatological word. It's the one who has a deep appreciation of life, a deep appreciation of the not me. He moves into a situation with a deep appreciation of that situation ere he even gets there. Now, when I see in our day a man who has a deep appreciation for the 20th, that's why, dear Graham, what's his name, the evangelist? Who? Billy Graham. My God, the poor man. He's trying to go back in a nostalgic fashion to 100 years ago. Now, he's a fine boy. He just isn't the people of God because he believes that yesterday was better than tomorrow. Do you understand that? And I'm not saying anything about dear Dr. Graham there as a well, you know what I'm saying. This is the revolutionary. And as I have indicated to you before, this revolutionary, these people of God, have a double task that is really one. And one of their tasks is to engage in what I've called just love. These people out here are always digging the next foot in the ditch of the civilizing process. downright in the midst of the political struggle, the economic struggle, the educational struggle, the struggle as religion turns into the new secular religion of our time. Always there in the midst, and they have to be there because the man of faith is always concerned. I noticed your prayers over there in the service. They said that you were holding up, and a prayer is always holding up before you your concerns. You were concerned, it said there, with the poor. You were concerned with the widows and the fatherless. You were concerned for those who were under the heel of tyranny. Now, what in the hell in the 20th century does it mean to be concerned? Does it mean you have of course you and I remember when I was a little boy, Mama was always going to, she's still alive, but she was always going to die. And she must have had several great final acts in history. And the doctor would finally call us in. And they could hardly get me in that room, to say goodbye to Mama. And they all thought that Joe had a real tender heart and that he just couldn't stand, Well, secretly, I think even then, now I'm sure of it, it wasn't that I gave a damn about Mama. I just couldn't stand the pain within myself of seeing my Mama suffer. Do you see the difference? Do you see the difference? Well, what I'm trying to say is that if you and I are concerned for those who have fallen out of the orders, that means that we have to be pushing into the future, for that means we have to call into question those wonderful structures of justice that left even one soul outside of them. And since structures of justice are always relative, the people of God were always on the move. For when the new structures of justice are formed, hell, somebody spills out, and that means the job is never done. That's what I mean by just love. That's what I mean by the kind of love that manifests itself in the kind of action that's always altering the civilizing structure in such a fashion that in depth and scope mankind may reach after well-being. And at the same time, this is a witnessing love. And don't you ever get this divorce from this, or else you're not the final revolutionaries. That does not mean that a pig who finally gets out on the front lines digging a ditch isn't welcome. My gracious, I find do-gooders in the city that are just doing phenomenal things to save their own damn souls. Now, mark you, when I'm in a conference like this divorce, I beat these people over the head. Well, I sure don't there, because I don't want them to leave. If they got one little smell of the fact that they were living in an illusion, they'd get the hell out of there, for they think they're saving their soul. And some of the best workers we have are these neurotic people that are living in some kind of a dream world. What I'm trying to say is that the man of faith, he never asks for the credentials of the guy standing next to him if that guy's got a pick in his hand hewing away. This is the nonsense of our being afraid to work alongside the communists. The question only is, who's calling the tune? And the man of faith has a kind of eternal security in the Word of God in the midst of his no security, that he can very well be the guy who's manipulating the whole revolution underneath the table. He's sort of like the syndicate leader, and nobody knows who in the hell he is. Do you see? And he may have the forces of hell out there really with the pick and the shovel in their hands. And it's this kind of hard-headed, realistic, down-to-earth men of faith that is coming into being within the church in our day. He wants to be sure which end of the yo-yo he's on. But the man who's the man of faith and depth, he understands that to give a person a crust of bread when he needs a crust of bread may very well be doing exactly the thing that is the worst possible thing that could be done to him. This is to say, the man of faith has the secret before he ever meets a person as to what that person's basic need is. And that need is always to hear the word in Jesus Christ. Do you understand what a phenomenal character I am? I know what the basic need of every man is before I meet him. Oh, I can get most people's gizzards. You know why I can get most people's gizzards? Because I know before I meet them what their basic need is. That's why. The basic need of every man is to hear the one eternal, everlasting, unchanging word, that they have cosmic permission to live their lives. Do you understand that's the only problem at the bottom that any human being ever had? Do you understand that? And do you understand what an awful calling to be the people who know this and have the word? I don't care whether he's white, black, whether he's caught in the jungles of Africa or the jungles of New York City. This is his need. You know, it'd be good if once in a while you just look into each other's eyes. Just would be good. So, this man of faith, while everybody's out there digging a ditch, he's digging the ditch plus pronouncing absolution on everybody he sees. I see the church is just a weird group of all warped people waddling across the stage of history. One after the other, one comes on, the other falls off, you know. And as they go through, while they are digging ditches, upheavaling nations, restructuring economic dynamics, exploding whole continents, while they're doing that, they're going through, you don't need to be afraid of tomorrow. Hell, you're received in it. Move out. Come on out of that cave. You don't need to be afraid. You have cosmic permission to be a fat man. Why, is it nasty? What? That's the church. That's the church. And the wonderful irony here is that the radical revolution doesn't take place unless both of these poles are going on at once. Do you understand that? You don't really break an age open until an age has permission to live. And here we are, the little old mices. The little old mices that have the key job in the whole civilizing process. Oh, most of these mices, nobody will ever remember them. You understand that? This is not going out to fame. A great many of them have been martyrs. Now, not those damn martyrs that Mrs. Big Bottom told you that had that glorious experience of being eaten by lions. Not that. No, this is a nasty old martyrship where people get hurt. Yes, there's but one promise to these people, and it's this. Now, what I'm trying to say is, and what I tried to say Wednesday in a very bad way, is the spirit problem of any man today. It's not at the point of how you live before the no-thingness of life. Now, if anyone in this group never faced that, they don't know what in the hell I'm talking about. But those are anachronistic people, where the spirit problem today is right here. This is where you decide to be in Christ or not to be in Christ. Period. You damn girls aren't going to waddle off to the suburbs to teach school. No, not you. Not at this moment in history. You're going to go down into the inner city. That's where you're going to teach school. And where the rest of the teachers run, the first day the students throw tomatoes at them. Or after the first month in which hell they had their lesson plan and they only got one page down the line. And still they can't read, and still they won't listen. And you're going to stay there, and you're going to die in that spot. In order that you may carve a brand new approach to education, that the underprivileged Negro people in our country may catch up and have an opportunity. Now, when I say that place, I mean that place. In principle, it could be the suburbs, but that's tomorrow in history. Today it's clear where the Lord is acting. And don't you go out to some cozy little old suburb and begin to teach there and come to me and tell me that you're in Christ, because I'll call you a liar. Now, you go to 11 o'clock on Sunday morning and tell them you're in Christ, and they'll encourage you, but you're not come to me. And you campus chaplains, if the first thing you're thinking of you go to some of your sick colleagues, don't come to me for comfort. This and this alone is where the people of God are. Is that 10 o'clock?
Yeah. You got 15 minutes.
I'd like to go on with that, but then I want to turn, and I feel I need to do that, and look a little more carefully at this individual man of faith in the midst of this body, which is throwing its life on the barbed wire between the no longer and the not yet. It's almost as if where the breach occurs, where you smell the divine activity intruding, there you go and shove your being into it to break it open, calling on people to come. This is to say, you never ask anybody to join the church. How in the hell could you ask anybody? You understand that? How could you ask somebody to go up there and throw their life into the breach? How could you ask somebody to go down in the inner city and teach? No. It's the people of faith that go there. I only say if you pretend to be a man of faith, then you get there. That's my command to you, not my request. But the people outside, they'll let them join the church. That's the Holy Spirit's business. He can send a man to the breach. We announce the good news to the world that this is our Father's world and you can live. And that if you slob it up out in the suburbs all your life, He'll love you just as much as He does Henry, who died out there on the breach. Are you clear about that? Are you clear about that? Well, if you aren't, you haven't heard a word I said. If you sit on your great big old fat can all your life and simply protect your life, you're loved of God just as much as the man who had his bowels torn out in Mississippi. But I want to go to that individual now standing there. I look upon the category in and through which the style of life that flows out of faith is delineated more adequately than any other is that category. My friend Luther made use of it. Oh, Wesley made use of it, and he meant something a little different than most people, I think, mean. Certainly Paul made use of it. Now, you could use other categories, but I think this is the primary one. The man in Christ is a free man. And it is not that he goes out trying to be free. It's not that. Paul was very clear that the fruit of the Christian life was singular and that it was undivorced from faith. That is, to be a man of faith is to be a free man. To be a free man is to be a man of faith. It isn't I become a man of faith and then I go out here to be free. To be a man of faith is to be a free man. That is to say that the Christian has always understood that the basic problem was not the ethical problem, but it was the faith problem. It was the problem of deciding who you were going to be. And in that decision flowed out the life. Now, we've got to put a little content on that. And I like to think of Christian freedom as the freedom to be lucid, the freedom to be sensitive, the freedom to be exposed, and the freedom to be disciplined. And let me very quickly talk about this. The man of faith is delivered unto his lucidity. This is to say that the man of faith knows everything that there is to be known, minus nothing. You want me to say that again? The man of faith knows everything that there is to be known, minus nothing. He's a man of utter lucidity. You remember the picture of Camus in the myth of Sisyphus, where he has Sisyphus pushing the rock up the hill, and his shoulders are dug into it, and his muscles are tensed, and his face is furrowed with strain and dripping with perspiration as he edges that rock of life up the hill. And when he gets it up at the hill and he steps back and he watches it roll back down again, Camus says this is the moment of the pause. in which one becomes utterly lucid about his lucidity. This is to say, utterly lucid about just the way things are. This is to say that the man of faith, he doesn't have to kid himself anymore about his showed-upness in history. He knows damn well that he just showed up and that nobody took counsel with him. He just appeared. And when he stumbled on himself, hell, there he was. And he was a male and not a female, or a female and not a male. And he had a certain kind of equipment upstairs here that other people did not have. His color was white or his color was black. He had slant eyes or straight eyes. He had my neurotic papa or he had yours. He dares to see that that's just the way it was, and he doesn't have to kid himself about death. He knows that one day they're going to stick him in a hole in the ground and that the worms are going to eat him, and that's all he knows. That's all he knows. Just period. He doesn't even have to conjure up some platonic scheme of a body with a soul in it with three parts, the appetitive, the irascible, and the rational, the bottom two of which he mold away in the ground, because they are so intimately connected, the body, but that rational part, which it has commonality with the stuff of the universe, floats up to heaven when he dies and beats the rap of death. He doesn't even have to have all of this kind of a rationalized escape. He can face life as it is. He's a man that's onto himself. He's liberated to be lucid about himself. He knows damn well that he's a sick fella. He knows that his psyche is warped and scarred, and he's going to die with a warped. And he also knows that his very scarring are his gifts, and that his problem isn't that he's scarred, but it's having guts enough to pick up those scars and shove them into history. I say to you again, my God, you take my neurotic pattern away from me that includes all kind of weird things, and you'd cut off every real gift that I possess. Do you know that? The lucid man understands that. He's the man that's on to his neighbor. He knows that his neighbor is an SOB before he ever meets him. He doesn't have to go around pretending otherwise. He's on to Philpot every time Philpot shows up. He's on to this one. She knows damn well I know things about her that she wouldn't tell her own mother, and yet she's never told me a thing. The man of faith is the lucid man. He doesn't have to go around kidding himself. Doesn't even have to kid himself about his mama. He doesn't have to kid himself about his brothers. He doesn't have to kid himself about his papa. He's the man that doesn't have to go around pretending anymore. He's a man that knows damn well that everybody lives in an illusion, but is the one who knows damn well that you can pick your can up and move out of an illusion once it's disclosed unto you. Do you get this kind of a picture? This is the lucid man, the man who is in faith and has had his life stamped with the approval of God Almighty, who understands that the great human adventure is God's world and that he loves it and it's been pronounced good. Secondly, the free man in Jesus Christ is the man who is sensitive. I'd use the word love here. I'd like to use the word love, but I'm so afraid of it I have to use another term. I mean, the man who is in Christ dares to be present to every situation. The French have the term disposabilité, one who dares to give himself to the situation, that is, be sensitive to it, like the file-down fingers of the safecracker, which does not feel simply the outside of the combination lock, but can feel the going-onnesses way down inside. This is the man who dares to be present with Reich's third ear, in which he doesn't ever pay any attention to any question that anybody asks. He pays attention to the context out of which the question is asked. He doesn't pay any attention to what a guy says. He pays attention to what a guy is both trying to reveal and conceal at the same time in what he said. Do you understand this? This is a man who dares to care beyond the surfaces that this girl presents to the world, to try to get down behind to where the spirit dimension of her being, because he knows that her real problems are only there. This is what I mean by sensitivity. The one who dares to be in a situation and is not asking the question of how things are going on the surface, but is constantly agonizing to get a hold of what is actually going on that's down beneath the consciousness of anyone that happens to be present. I like to look upon it as a man who takes a wash rag and wrings the last drop of meaning out of that wet wash rag. That's the kind of a freedom to be sensitive that I think is present when one dares to receive themselves in the world. The ancient Hebrews were clear about this when they saw that the divine activity was not only on the upbeats of life, but also in the downbeats of life. That getting an A in a course is not simply significant, that getting an F in a course is exactly as significant. No more and no less. You understand that? By having a good sex night with your wife is no more significant than having a bad sex night with your wife. That not only those great successes, but those failures had meaning. Not only the yeas of life, but the nays of life were the divine eternal yes over existence. That not only getting born, but getting died is significant. And who's the one to say finally which is prior to the t'other, as Calvin would put it? This is what it means to be sensitive. Camus, as you know, uses the figures of the lover and the actor and the conqueror. And the lover, as the free man, is the man who loves every woman he meets right to the hilt. And when he finishes, he drops her so that he can be ready for the next woman, so that he can love her to the hilt. Now, if you've got Puritan morality in your veins, like I have, you like to hasten on to say that he's talking about life situations. This is the man who takes every situation as it comes, and grasps every bit of meaning out of his past and drops it so that he can be ready for what God is confronting him with in the next situation. And he moves into that and squeezes. You understand that you don't have any more lifetime than you have right in this room at this moment. You never had any more, and you never will have any more. You know, one of the great tragedies of life is that most of our experience of life we don't experience. We don't stand to attention. Think of the living that you and I have done since we got up this morning, and did not have selfhood enough to stand at attention long enough to take it into us. We were in a worship service. There's a hell of a lot wrong with that worship service. But what was wrong with it was just as important as what was not wrong with it. Do you understand what I mean? The man of faith dares to be. He marches through life. Attention! This is what I mean. This is the man who loves and does not lose his soul to any moment. Yes, yesterday was given. Tremendous! But tomorrow is at hand. I move out and create it. He's an actor. He plays many roles in life. My gracious, I'm just amazed at the number of roles I have. Being the husband of Lynn is not an easy role. It's a hell of an exciting one. But Lynn isn't meaning my life. To hell with her. That's my role. I live it to the hilt, but I don't lose my soul to it. I'm also a clergyman. I tell you, in our day, that's a hard role to play. What does it mean to authentically create the role of a clergyman? You see, what I'm saying is that I am the clergyman of the 20th century. I say, let every clergyman be exactly like me. That's what it means to play a role to the hilt. Now, granted, there have been many Hamlets played, but the man who did not say to himself, "This is Hamlet," didn't know what in the hell he was doing, and he never came off with it. That's what I mean. You play it to the hilt without losing your soul to it in any way. Tomorrow, to hell with my picture of what a clergyman is. You play many roles, and they're complex roles, and you play them as if this is the only part you have, while at the same time you're utterly nonchalant to it. Luther calls this a holy nonchalance toward life, an utter seriousness that makes the nonchalant think you're a Pharisee, and an utter nonchalant that makes the Pharisee think you're a libertine. Do you understand this? This is the man of faith. That is to say, he's never boxed. About the time you pigeonhole him as an ass over here, he's being an ass over here. And pretty soon, the people that are assing him decide that they must be the asses. It's that kind of a picture. This is the man who really cares about life. He cares about people. This is the concerned one. This is the one who can literally give himself without thinking how long he's going to live, and yet not lose his soul to any kind of the man who gets afraid of how long he's going to live is already solidified some past that he's going to pasture in. And thirdly, Camus said that the free man was the man who was the conqueror. And this is the man who sees that life has a billion causes, and I stand before them all. This is to say, with Paul, everything is permitted, and yet not everything is expedient. What in the hell did he mean by that? He meant you damn well had to choose. You just damn well had to choose. Everything is permitted, and yet you have to choose. And that's frightening, because you know that when you stand before that woman and say yes to her, that all those guys you might have been, had it been some other woman, or had you stayed single, you would never be. And so it is even in choosing a vocation. The overwhelmingness of the possibility. Now, for the man who isn't a man of faith, who's got some little narrow God like this, hell, he doesn't have much of a problem there. The man of faith has utter insecurity, for everything is good and permitted. And the man of faith dares to launch himself into a cause, knowing that that cause is not going to save his soul, that cause is not going to save history's soul. They tell me that even the pyramids are beginning to round off a little bit. He's the one who sees that every cause in the world is finally a ridiculous cause, because one day the bodies in the sky bump, and earth isn't anymore, and when earth isn't anymore, everything that you and I mean by human history is gone. I see, this is the man who dares. He's like the man who sees that 10,000 years from now, somebody's going to pick up a broken cup handle, take it to the archaeologist, who's going to say, that came from them there people back there roughly between Ramesses I and Einstein. You understand that? And no man who doesn't see that and embrace it knows what it means to love. This is the man who's sensitive. This is the man who cares. This is the man who creates for some other reason than simply his own soft, soggy interior being. And the third thing is that a man who is in faith has the freedom to expose himself. And by exposure here, I mean the man dares to act and take within him the risk of acting. He acts, and I'm in a hurry now. He acts without any appeal. Finally, no man has any three good reasons that justifies any act he ever did. Period. Or if I decide that this criteria is going to approve my act, my question is, how did you decide upon that criteria? Do you understand that? Every moral deed is finally without any appeal. This is what Paul meant when he said, a man is only justified by faith and nothing more. The free man is the man who dares to risk himself without ever again any unambiguous knowledge that he did the right thing. And secondly, he's the man who lives with the consequences of his act. This is to say, you never did anything in which you knew beforehand the consequences. The man of faith takes into himself the consequences, whatever they may be, before he does his deed. And therefore, after the fact, he does not say, that's the fault of my having a neurotic papa, or that's the fault of that campless chaplain who advised me to marry this slob. No, he takes upon himself the responsibility for his own existence. I tell you once again, I came out of a family where a papa was neurotic. Am I the product of a neurotic father? No! I am Joseph Wesley Matthews, responsible for every ounce of it. That's what it means to be a free man in Jesus Christ. It wasn't that I married some old shrew and therefore became this mouse. I get sick and tired of the figure of women castrating the men. Now, mark you, they do that. But where you find a man who excuses himself in that he had a wife who hell, he had the possibility of slitting her throat. And he chose not to do it. He's accountable if he is sexless in this particular moment in history. That's the free man. He is blamed on nobody or no thing. No external circumstance has nothing whatsoever to do with my life. I am my life. That's the freedom that is in Jesus Christ. And lastly, and I've got to hurry, this man is free to be a disciplined man. And I don't mean by discipline those schedules that a freshman puts up in his room about when he's going to wash his teeth and when he's going to get up in the morning. I don't care when he gets up. I'm interested in what he does when he gets up. By discipline, I mean the man who has taken upon himself to be himself in the civilizing process. This comes to me in the form of the indicative and the imperative. The gospel of Jesus Christ strikes me as the indicative. That's just the word. Joseph, you're loved of God. But when I receive that indicative as the indicative of my life, it becomes the imperative of my life. That is to say, I must be what I am. I am a forgiven man. Therefore, I must be, in every life situation, a forgiven man. I am a received man. Therefore, in every life situation, I must be the received man, which is to say, I can receive you. Do you understand that? And it's not an imperative that comes from the outside. It's my imperative. I must be what I am. I must ever become what I be. That's my imperative upon myself. And the man of faith is set free to be the utterly disciplined man. This is to say that I require of myself, and out of the great indicative of the gospel, I can require of myself that in every situation I stand at no other point than that point between the no longer and the not yet. This is to say, in very brief, that I must always expect you to find me standing, wherever you meet me, under whatever circumstances, a free man. Did you understand what I said? I must expect you and all of history always to expect, if there's nobody else in the world, to find Joseph Wesley Matthews, that old obnoxious free man. Now, whether you find me that way or not, that's beside the point. I'm not even talking about that. Mark you, that isn't even get near what I'm pointing to. What I mean is that I must dare to expose my being to civilization and expect that all men shall always find me, expect to find me, standing as a free man. That's what I mean by discipline. This is to say that I must always be, and mark you, it's a 24-hour-a-day job, a lifelong job. There are no vacations. There's no rest moments, no breathing spaces. 24 hours a day, I must be the iron pillar and the cruciform principle. If I were to make a coat of arms today, it would be the iron cross, something like the copper cross of the Congo. The man of faith is the man of the iron cross. This is to say that he's the man who disciplines himself, demands of himself, demands that history demand of him, that he be found standing here, giving himself for the civilizing process. Don't you sentimentalize that. You're never going to decide how I give my life. I alone decide. But you must always demand that that life be given. Now, there's a new church coming into being. The greatest frustration in my life, either than spiritual problems that I have that are a more intimate sort, the greatest problem of my life is the problem of how you find historical concretion that will bind together in a significant push those iron men of the cross that God has today called out all over this world. I go to Japan, I found them. I found them in Africa. They're in Europe. I found them in India. And they're all over the United States of America. I don't know what the form was going to be, but the new church is here. And it's made up of the free men who dare to be lucid and sensitive and exposed and disciplined as the revolutionary cadre, expending their lives on behalf of mankind. And the hour is at hand when there must be a great falling away. And I say to you, mice, maybe you can do the church the greatest service by being the first one to get up and get the hell out of the church, declaring to the world that you haven't got the guts to be it in the 20th century, that you thought that you could be it in the 18th. I sometimes think that if one of these little old ladies would just stand up and say, boys, I'm leaving, the battle's getting too rough, that this just might even break us open. And so you people of unfaith, maybe you could do a great faith-filled, unfaithful act by getting up and saying, this ain't for me. Because when they assembled that colloquy, you know, back in heaven, that was there when you and I got our marching orders. You remember being there? Well, they're going to assemble us at back, you know, after all. And they're not going to ask you any questions there except how you died. Now, I don't know what in the hell they're going to do after they ask us that question. That's the only question that's on the agenda. I got that information before I left. How you going to die? Let's pray. Well, let's don't pray. I'll pray. I don't blame you, because prayer is the most horrifying human activity in the world. And the reason for it is that whatever else it is, it means you come to terms with who in the hell you are. And sometimes you thought you gave up private devotions, as you call them, because they didn't have any meaning. You could say that yesterday, and be honest. Today, that's not the problem. You know, now you've got to come to terms with who you are, and that's not what you want to do. O thou who dost ever remain the naught that intrudes in our life as the only fullness, have mercy on us. Amen.